Baton Rouge Parish with the express purpose of charging the library board of control and library staff to deliver library services throughout the parish of East Baton Rouge. And what we've been doing since 1986, here's the little history lesson, is we have been saving our money and then spending it. It's called the pay-as-you-go plan. What a concept in America. So basically, and this is the history lesson that's important, basically we're paid with property taxes once a year. And I was talking to a college student about this last week, and the analogy that we used was, what if you just got paid once a year? If you're paid at the end of the year on December 31st after working the whole year, something's not right. Mama and Daddy have been really shaking down the sugar on you because you didn't have money coming in to pay your utilities, to buy your gas money, to feed your dog, to feed yourself. You didn't have those funds. And even further, if you had an emergency and needed to buy a new car, let's just say there was no car ferry, there's no rich uncle, there's no funds in savings, and there's no credit card that's going to work for you, and no one's going to lend you any money. So that's a bad situation. So years ago, back in 1985, when the library was still part of the City Parish General Fund, and the library was cut and cut and cut. Hours were cut, books were cut. The only books I was able to put on the shelves were donated books from people like you and me who still like to read. And then finally we cut our staff and actually closed branches. That was in 1985. In 1986, the public came to the library and said, we want stable funding. We want to be sure that there is consistent library service, not just at one building, but throughout the parish. And thus began the dedicated tax millage. And at that time, they agreed, we're going to pay as you go. We're going to save it first, and then when we have it, then we'll start the plan to spend it. So there was some real tight belts the first year. And beyond that, we started operating at all locations 7 days a week. And then we started laying aside a little bit every month, as it were. It's kind of like the Dave Ramsey way where you put a little bit in that envelope and you don't touch that envelope. So we put a little bit aside, and voila, after a few years, out popped the Jones Creek Regional Branch in the southern part of the parish where there was no library service. And then we saved some more, and then we're able to introduce to you the Bluebonnet Regional Branch Library. And I can't tell you how many times people are amazed when I say, we cut that ribbon, the building was paid for. The building was paid for. Before we even hired the architect, the building was paid for. The envelope was ready, it had their name on it, and that was their dedicated funds. So that's the process we've been working with since 1986. And with that process, we've been able to not only open every single branch 7 days a week into the evening, we're not keeping bankers' hours, and we've been able to build the Jones Creek Regional and the Bluebonnet Regional and the Greenwell Springs Regional and the Fairwood Regional. Thank you. But then we've been able to go to the next oldest branches and replace a library that was basically the size of this room with something that could be 12,000 square feet, that could be 20,000 square feet, depending on the situation. Is it a little neighborhood library? Is it a larger community library? So we've been marching steadily through the parish, and things keep changing, and as they change, we try to update the older branches. When we built all those original branches, there was no such thing as a computer or internet. In fact, when we built the Jones Creek Library, there was no Wi-Fi. They had 4 computers for the public. Things have changed. By the time we built the Eden Park Library, we had something called Wi-Fi. Didn't have it at the main library, but we rolled out the new service, the new feature to the newest branch. And at the time, it was the Eden Park branch. And then, as you've seen, the main library at Goodwood, the River Center branch, and my 14 branches are soon going to be 15 because we are this close to opening the South Branch Library off Perkins Road. Yes. And it too is paid for. It too will have the best of what we can offer at the time we built it. And it will be matched by the Scotlandville Branch Library renovation expansion project. Actually, last Wednesday, we got the envelope with the low bid and came in under budget. Yay. And we're going to be able to put those same features. What are these features? Well, we've seen, and you've seen if you've used the main library, people need people. Libraries are not for books, they're for people. And people need places to meet, they need places for board meetings, they need places for programs, they need places to work and study and get tutored and talk to their doctor in a private place. My goodness, they need places to interview for a job. And they need places to acquire job training, skills training. So our main library does all those things. Heck, we host job fairs. This last weekend, the United Way was there with energy, and people were doing your taxes. Next week, it'll be Money Moves Baton Rouge. The week before that, 2,605 happy people came for the Microcon. And let me tell you, every kind of costume was there, all family friendly. And the library was, of course, for people who enjoy books, but these were people who wanted to write their own books. They wanted to draw their own illustrations. They wanted to get into book publishing. So we're consuming it, and we're helping to generate it. We're doing content creation ourselves, and we're helping our citizens do content creation. And when you see a middle schooler or a teenager, when you see the star light up in their eyes and they see that there's something that they can do that belongs just to them, that's a wonderful feeling. When you see someone who's re-entering society after perhaps being away for a bit, and they have come for helping organizations to help them, whether it's with expungement, re-entry job fairs, the counseling that the Career Center gives them on how best to put themselves forward and what jobs might be good for them. And then our small business service talking to them about how to be an entrepreneur and start their own business. These are wonderful opportunities that the library provides. We even changed our mission statement a couple years ago to put access, discovery, and opportunity because we felt so strongly about it. So we've got the numbers and business is up. The book is still the brand, but let me tell you, y'all are checking it out from the cloud as well as in print. And in fact, I brought some beautiful print books today that we also have in ebooks because it's our new One Book, One Community. I love to get that out to y'all. Last year, we did Max Miller's Tasting History. The year before that, we had Chris Thomas and the Blues. The year before that, we had the Atchafalaya Houseboat. So let's see, what's next? We've been in the swamp, we've made music, and we've eaten ourselves into a stupor. What's next in Baton Rouge? It's football. Season of Life by Jeffrey Marks, who is a Pulitzer Prize-winning author. He's a sports writer, grew up in Baltimore. He married a local girl, so he's ours now. But Jeffrey was a ball boy for the Baltimore Colts. He was in the sports industry, and as a book, he decided to chronicle a season in the life of a popular high school coach who was a former NFL player. Maybe you've heard of him, Joe Ehrman. And Joe Ehrman had something magical as he was mentoring the young youth on his team. And basically, Boys into Men, you will follow that journey, but he's also having his own journey with his own family relationships. his journey with his father. So that's going to be a really wonderful read that we will kick off with a tailgate party next month, and I hope you're all there. But that ties in nicely with the other programs we've been offering, because it's all about making connections. And we've been offering a wonderful program that the Fourth Estate assisted us with on the Bill of Obligations, the 10 habits that we need to have to be a truly successful democratic society. And members of the media assisted. They were moderated. They wrote in. It was wonderful. And then we moved into legacy letters, where we're being very intentional and figuring out what we want to say to the people that matter in our lives. These are the kinds of programs that our staff put together, and we push them out throughout the library system. So I've bragged about the library. I've bragged that numbers are up, and you know we love numbers. We love data, and we love to be able to tell you where we got it. So ask me anything. But let's go back to why I'm here. Every 10 years, the library needs to renew that dedicated property tax, and it's time, every 10 years. So our tax expires at the end of this year, and we presented our own proposal that was created after working for months and months with citizen groups, with stakeholders. We talked to architects, engineers, urban planners. We commissioned a facilities master plan summary. It's available online, where they looked at every single one of our facilities to check them out. Because some of us, even though we look pretty good because we try not to defer maintenance, some of us are getting a little bit long in the tooth. And those older libraries are getting a little tired because people walk through the door. They walk on that carpet. They sit on those chairs. Ladies and gentlemen, I never knew what a double rub was until I went to the library. But that's every time you sit down and get up, you put a little friction on that chair. And that chair covering is only good for so many double rubs. And let me tell you, at the main library, even though we only opened the beautiful new main library, I'm going to have to stop calling it new. Maybe not until the new bridge is not the new bridge. But the new main library, we started replacing the chairs several years ago. We sent them off to the prison, and Angola, the prison enterprises, recovers those chairs so that we can get some more double rubs on those wonderful surfaces. Carpet coming out, roofs, chillers, boilers, energy management systems, because we really like to be efficient. Whenever an old light dies, it's replaced with LED, because that's cheaper in the long run. It's more efficient. It's actually better light, and it means less maintenance. So those kinds of things are part of our operating DNA. So we had these architects and engineers look at every library and say, you know what? That floor system at Eden Park's getting a little janky. And we give it a few more years, but then you're going to have to do something. They looked at very obvious things in the infrastructure, but they also looked at the way people want to use the library and are using the library. As we've renovated, we've put in small group study rooms that could be used for work or meetings or tutoring. As we've renovated, we've put in single-use restrooms. When I took my dad in his wheelchair to the main library, I had a big uh-oh. Because, man, we worked hard to put lots of restrooms in the main library, because the original one had one, y'all. One restroom. So I was so proud that we had the restrooms until I had my dad in his wheelchair, and I went, uh-oh. We don't have a single-use bathroom except for the baby room, the family room, where I could bring my father and help him attend to his needs. So going forward, the next library that we built certainly had that. Looking at ADA and accessibility, there's new rules are constantly coming down. We're an aging population. We need more handicap spots, not just at the main library, but every branch. Those kinds of things are infrastructure questions, and we also question how people are using the library. As some of our nonfiction goes to the cloud, that frees up more room for something that our aging population wants, which is large print books. Y'all, large print books take up more space than regular print books. That makes sense. So I got to have a little bit more space. At the main library, the large print books are marching to the east. Kind of, is that like Sherman marching to the sea? That's large print. That's a way that people are using things. People are using new kinds of things. It's called the Library of Things. Y'all, back in 1979, the Junior League helped start the art and sculpture collection. And then we even had Polaroid cameras. And then we got this thing called, VHS. We were hot stuff. Well, now, in addition to the audiovisual, we've been having telescopes for years. We've just started microscopes. Ukuleles checked out 2 weeks ago after the ukulele orchestra demonstrated and serenaded us with their sweet, sweet sounds. We've been checking out games, especially since COVID. What a concept that a family could actually speak to each other with their eyes, not on their cell phone. And a game allows you to do that. Of course, we have hot spots that are circulating. Blood pressure kits are circulating. These are new things that the community wants to share. They're also sharing in making and maker spaces. You don't have to buy your own Cricut and your own sublimation machine and your own Glowforge and laser cutter, let alone 3D printer. We have those for you, not just at one library, but at a variety of libraries, and people are making good use of those things. So the architects are like, well, we need space for these new kinds of uses, and so they looked at our plan for the next 10 years and they said, you better pencil me in for a roof here, pencil this in for a chiller there. How about a boiler in 2030 for this branch? How about new carpet for X branch? You know, let's put some data behind our decision making. And they costed all that out. And then we, of course, talked to all the other experts and figured out for operating all branches 7 days a week plus outreach service, what would it take as we inflate each year? We were told to plan for 2% growth and 2% inflation, so that's kind of a wash, but you still have to put it down on paper. There's some things we don't know about yet. There's a chance that the railroad property tax will be redistributed in the next year or so, and that is something that we relied on as part of our revenue because they were paying property taxes too. So a lot of loose ends, and one thing that people don't understand also is the fiscal year for 2024 is not yet closed. It'll be closed in the middle of March. So we're still operating on the numbers that we know from November 2024, and that's how we built our budget and presented a plan that could actually lower the ask from the 11.1 we had been asking since 1995, 2005, 2015. We figured we could lower it and still deliver all the services that we promised, keep with the capital improvements program to protect the public's investment in the 14, soon to be 15 locations that it had, possibly start a new location at the Gap in the library map, which is at the old Earl K. Long site. And then in my dreams, there's another Gap. And we know this Gap because when the bookmobile goes there, they are swarmed. And that is west of Gardier. Well, if you've seen the 3 O'Clock Project and Dr. Muriel Harrison, she's all over that. And we think that's a good place for a little express library. We're calling them start libraries. They're just in our minds. We put them down on paper, and we'd like to start saving for them drip, 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 a little bit at a time. So that's our plan. That's what we presented. And we got really good feedback from our plan from citizens as well as government officials. They said, it's so good that you listened to us because we told you to look at your millage and lower it. We were different people because we paid attention. So that was the plan that we presented. In the meantime, another plan was presented. And that plan is different in two important ways. First of all, it does lower the number from the 10.5 we were asking down to 9.8. But more importantly, it undedicates our funds for the future as well as from the past. So remember I said I don't have a surplus, I have a fund balance, and that fund balance contains next year's budget, next year's operating budget, and then $26 million more that we've saved for the future capital projects. So if those are in the general fund and no longer dedicated, there are no more capital improvements. Baker was next. We were about ready to work on getting an architect for Baker. After that was Central and Zachary, then Delmont. And the plan for Delmont, architects looked at it. How many of y'all remember Lank Carcentino? 1984, Pat Green cut the ribbon. I was there. He was wearing his green jacket. And Lank Carcentino secured a block grant, which is why we built the Delmont Gardens Library. And we added on to it before Katrina in 2005. But y'all, that's a 1984 building. To renovate it into a modern library that offers the same kinds of things we're offering in other locations would be cost prohibitive. It would be cheaper to build fresh, and I would love to take advantage of that Plank Road infrastructure that has begun for the bus rapid transit plan and get us more visible on Plank Road. Then we would repurpose the existing branch into a small business development center. Man, we'd be doing the Oculus all day long. The career coach would go there either through Zoom calls with a dedicated space or make weekly visits. We could get it going on there. But that's a plan that depends on the fund balance remaining dedicated to the purposes that have been determined that make sense for our parish. So one thing I like to say is that we are the Dave Ramsey of government agents, and I was so tickled when I heard someone say that back to me last week. I was really tickled when a businessman came to me and said, you know what? I used that data Axle resource. I saved $5,000. I was tickled when a councilman said, Wall Street Journal, you mean I can save $400 by just using it from the library? And I'm like, yes. And then he even remembered we had the all data car repairs. So I'm like, you're going to save, because you're going to know what needs to happen with your car, and you're going to be an intelligent consumer. Those kinds of things are wonderful to hear. The testimony that we heard last week showed you the full gamut, the depth and breadth of the way our human beings are using your East Baton Rouge Parish Library right here in the parish. Of course, there were children. I cried. There were people who used it in their retirement. There were people who used us for social services. There were people who used us to help prevent crime or help after the fact when we're trying to get our citizens back into the workforce and get them gainfully employed so they stay on the right path. We heard from people who had been assisted getting jobs, learning languages, passing their grades with the free online tutoring till midnight. We heard from so many people. We want the opportunity to offer that same plan to the voters in October. What happened at the meeting was we had a lot of people talking. We were going to run out of time. There was no obvious 7 votes to approve. It requires 7 votes, not just a majority of who's sitting in the room. 7 votes. 7 votes to delete, 7 votes to defer. There was no action coming forth because more and more we were hearing people say, we want to talk about this more now that we've seen this alternative plan. We want the time to converse about this, to really dig deep into it. So at that point we said, okay, we'll voluntarily delete our item because we don't need 7 votes to delete our item. And then we promised that over the next furious spate of days, we will talk to whoever wants to talk. And we have been having those conversations with members of the Metro Council. We have been hearing from stakeholders and officials. And we will have a public board meeting on Wednesday for our board to, in public, discuss what options might be available to us to get on a Thursday agenda at noon. It's not the end of the world if we don't get on that agenda at noon. There is a November election. So a lot of things are up in the air. It's a fast change, a rapidly developing story, as they say in the news. And we really appreciate the intentional, strategic conversations that we've been having with so many people. It's time for us to go back to the voters this year, we hope, with a plan that protects the library, protects the dedicated funds that you have been trusting us, and that you have told us that you did trust us and that you thought we were good stewards of your money. People, after that first tax passed, a gentleman came in, he said, well, I don't like taxes. And I said, but you can see where yours are, because they were behind me. I finally had new books. You could see that plans were taking shape, and you could already see that every branch was open 7 days a week. So, any questions? And Bill will moderate me.
I would just remember questions from members of the media and members of the press club only. And please make it a question and not an editorial comment.
All right, I'll use both.
There you go.
Who's got a question? And I will repeat it. I see a question from Patrick with the Advocate.
Mayor, so you said that you met with Metro Council. Have you spoken with anybody in the mayor's office since Wednesday?
So one of our board members have spoken to some of the mayor's staff since Wednesday, and we hope to continue those conversations. And I didn't repeat the question. I'm so sorry. But it was obvious in my answer. Who's next? Yes, sir.
What is the ideal situation you guys are looking to come to Wednesday? And if the possibility of another stalemate happens again, like it happened this past week, what are you guys looking into then?
So the question is, what's the best outcome for Wednesday, and what happens if there's a stalemate? So attorneys have rendered different opinions about what happens if March 12th passes and our item would be on March 26th. I've gotten different opinions on how we go forward with that. It's very confusing for the general public. It's confusing for our staff. It's confusing for us. So the best thing, I think, for Wednesday is for our board to be able to have a dialogue where we can see that someone has agreed to a compromise that protects the library and still gives us sufficient funds to move forward with not just operations 7 days a week at all the existing branches, but lets us continue the capital improvement plan. Because with buildings, it's not like George Foreman. You don't set it and forget it. You have to maintain your facilities, or you're very sorry. Deferred maintenance costs more in the long run. When you get that leak and then you start getting something dripping down the walls and then you have mold and mildew and electrical things sparking out on you, that's never good. So we like to be proactive. And that's the way we roll for early literacy. That's the way we roll for education, for prevention of crime. And by the way, we are so appreciative of all of our law enforcement agencies, and I do want to make sure everybody knows that when the main library was open as a warming center, it was with our law enforcement people in the building with me. The constable's office was there. Sheriff's deputies were there. The Baton Rouge City Police were there, and they were working with compassion and patience all day, welcoming people and figuring out where they needed to go. There was kind of like a triage going, and it was wonderful to see how people can collaborate and cooperate. So nothing but love for that. Another question? I see two hands. Okay, Yes, Angela.
My question is, Mary, is that, I know it's not excess money, but is that money invested while you're waiting to expend it on new services on the?
Yes, ma'am. So the question is it excess money in the fund balance? Did I read more or less? Okay, so fund balance is a governmental accounting construct, if you will, where we park the next year's revenues, and they are all, there's, the spreadsheet will put you to sleep, but there is 1,000 cell in that spreadsheet that outlines every cost for operations, so that's about $65 million. Then we have $2 million for insurance because we're self-insured. So when the Greenwell Springs Library flooded, we had to come up with the money. Maybe one day you're going to get something back from some library ferry or FEMA, but you had to be able to expend right then. So we have that ready. We're required to have insurance, of course. And then the other $26 million that is currently in fund balance is dedicated. It's assigned to some of these projects that we've been putting money aside for so that we could get them out the gate.
It is invested now?
Yeah, it is invested, and in fact, we're getting a good rate of return on that, which adds to our revenue until we're ready to spend it. So that's a fun question, or a sidebar to that question. As you start collecting, until you're ready to draw down and say, Baker, you're up, or Central, it's your turn, that money accrues interest. And so on the front side of that 10-year cycle, you've got a little bit more, and then by the time you're starting to let those projects out the gate, fully funded, then it starts to draw down. So it's kind of an interesting shape when you look at it over the last 40 years. And there was another question on the back table. Yes, sir.
The Friday's press release from the mayor's office said that this was a result of overtaxation. How do you feel about that?
So the question is, do I feel that our fund balance is a result of overtaxation? And I'm going to say no. We're required to have a balanced budget, and the numbers that we plug in for whatever are based on the best guess numbers that analysts can tell us. Sometimes we have salary savings because we can't fill our positions. That money goes into fund balance because we're not spending it. It's not like when I used to work in a university and on June 30th, if you didn't spend it, you lost it. It's not like that. So people would feverishly buy things that they didn't need. Not this university, a different state, okay? But we accrue savings over time through fund balance and through economy of scale with some of our purchases. The main library, when we built it, it came in under budget, y'all, under budget by a big number because we had to budget as if I was buying 100 chairs times X dollar per chair. But when the time came to purchase those chairs, we got a better deal. We were able to use state contract. We were able to get economy of scale for volume business. And instead of paying list price, maybe we're getting a 40 or 50% cut off the price. That's a pretty good savings. So that went into the fund balance to be used to pay for the Greenwell Springs branch when they flooded. Another way that we accrue revenue is through that interest that we are earning. It's not a guarantee that we're earning great interest, but right now we're earning as best as we can. And one last thing, sometimes a project is delayed, and so that money's still sitting there. Like every time we do a bookmobile, it's like an elephant baby. We may budget it for 1 year, but it's going to take 3 years to get that thing out of a factory. We had commissioned, her name is King Cake, the new one that's going to the preschools. It goes to about 140 preschools every month. Goes other places too, but visits them, swaps out their books, brings them STEM kits, does story time for them. That bookmobile Just imagine a giant RV, but with extra stuff, including Wi-Fi hotspots and able to serve as a warming and cooling center in an emergency. Imagine that somewhere in a factory, and during COVID, every single factory said, no transmissions for you. They're all going to Amazon. So we waited and waited and waited. So in the meantime, that money is in that savings. It's in that envelope in the kitchen that Dave Ramsey told me to keep for that fund that I knew was going to happen. One day my car is going to break and I'm going to need a new one. We deal in cash, basically. There's no credit card for this, and we're not bonding and we're not borrowing. So thanks for that question. Another question. I can't see you, but I hear you.
I see you have a $65 million operating budget. Is there a detailed analysis of that somewhere?
Yes, sir. All of our budgets are in City Parish in open budget. We're in open data. We're open all the time. It's all there. It's there from the year before and the year before and the year before. And then at every board meeting, which is regularly on the third Thursday of the month, we always have a budget update that's line by line for each category that expenditures are being made. And I will remind y'all that we are a special fund agency of City Parish. What is the rules? It's checks and balances. We follow every single rule that finance and purchasing and the parish attorney puts upon us. They audit us. It's all out there. So when I say librarians like to share, we share. Is there another question? Here's one.
Mary, you mentioned the ad valorem railroad tax, and I know you testified in front of our committee. I can't remember what that figure was. What was the figure?
Thank you. And the question from Representative Barbara Freiberg has to do with the possible redistribution of the railroad property tax. Because interestingly enough, the parish of Baton Rouge has been collecting the entire property tax for any railroad in the state because the offices were here. So it didn't matter where the railroad went. It didn't matter whether there was a live line or a dead line. And there's wheels within wheels on this. But we stand to lose $850,000 per year if that is redistributed, and then we would just keep $20,000. Yes, it's just a matter of time. So that number going forward will be affected. Any other questions? Well, thank y'all. I want you to be sure and read the skinny book, Season of Life. I want you to check out our library website. We do have a friends group. They are mobilizing. They intend to go to every council meeting from now on. And we just want to make sure that the right news is, the right facts are out there. Thank you. Yes. Oh, Angela. So both board meetings will take place at the main library. The special board meeting will take place on Wednesday at 5 o'clock, and it's going to be upstairs in the boardroom. I can fit a lot of people in the boardroom, so we'll see. And then the regular board meeting takes place in the large meeting room the very next day at 4 o'clock. I would do the Wednesday meeting in that same room, but I've got the Baton Rouge lecture coming in at 6, and I don't mess with them. So thank you. There you go, Bill.
Well, thank you, Mary, and thank you all for coming out. Hope you can come next Monday. We'll have Stephen Procopio from PAR, so another good speaker. So thank you all very much. See you next week.
Thank you. Good job. I hope it wasn't too loosey-goosey.
No.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Can I get a quick second?
Yes, yes. Yes, you can.
I don't know. They
Yeah, I'm
were
not
on.
sure it was.
It didn't sound like
It didn't sound like it. This one doesn't change. I think
Yeah, no kid.
oh well, I think everybody heard it.
Yeah. Sounded like everybody, and then The room next door, that mic always works really well. These handhelds are just not good. I think she did a good job.
Can you tell us, I don't know,